All right, so last time we started talking about game theory, right? How we can use strategic decisions. We're looking at strategic decisions here. We're trying to predict what's the optimal way to play these games. Also, how do we think people are going to play these games? We talked about Nash equilibrium as being our main tool for trying to predict what's going to happen. Nash equilibrium is where everyone is playing a best response to each other at the same time, right? So whatever you're doing, I am doing in response to you, whatever is going to make me best off, and whatever I'm doing, you're doing the same thing, right? So neither of us want to change what we're doing when we're in a Nash equilibrium. However, we've only covered a small subset of the kinds of games that there are. In particular, all the games that we've covered so far are what are called simultaneous games, where you and I are both making our decision at the same time, or at least I don't get to know what you've chosen before I make my choice, right? So like in the Prisoner's Dilemma game, we're in separate rooms, we're each making our own choice before we come back together and figure out what we each chose, right? Or in the Meet Your Friend at IHOP or Whole Foods game, right? Same idea, right? You don't get to see what they've chosen before you do your thing. Obviously, not all games are like that. There are plenty of games where there is timing involved, where there's one choice made, and then somebody else makes a different choice, and then somebody else makes a different choice, where you get to see what has happened so far in the game, right? And we can also solve these kinds of games using the same idea of Nash equilibrium. Just the process is going to be slightly different. We're going to use a way of finding a Nash equilibrium called backwards induction. That's what we're going to do. So, take a quick example of a game that has some timing in it. So let's say that you have licensed a new technology and you're going to start a company. And you are going to decide how much to invest in this company. Are you going to get a whole bunch of investment and you're going to invest a lot? Or are you going to get a relatively small investment so you can keep more of your stuff and invest a little? However, you also have a competitor who's going to license a similar technology, and they are also deciding whether to invest a lot or to invest a little. Okay? Now, investing a lot is more expensive, right? However, you definitely don't want to be in a situation where you invested less than your competitor, because then they're going to take over the market, you're going to get pushed out. So we're going to represent this game with a tree. So remember, the only distinction between what we had before and what we have now is that your opponent, your competitor, gets to see what you chose before they make their decision. Right? That is the key difference, or the only difference. And so we're going to represent that with a tree where time sort of moves from left to right. You can also do top to bottom if you like. I tend to do left to right because you can fit in more stuff. So here's how the game works, right? Here's you. So the tree it has nodes and branches. So each sort of spot where a decision is made is a node that branches off into the different options that you have. So I've labeled this one here with you. That indicates that you are the one who is making this choice. And you can choose to follow the different branches. So you can choose to invest a lot, or you can choose to invest a little. Now, based on what we've chosen, that can lead us to one of two other nodes. And they're separate nodes because the other person gets to see what you chose before they make their decision. Right? So the opponent knows whether they're up here because they can see, oh, I noticed that they invested a lot, or I see that they invested a little, so I know that I'm down here. So the other person knows where they are in this tree. Based on that, they can also make a choice. They can choose to invest a lot or to invest a little, having seen you invest a lot, or they can choose to invest a lot or a little, having seen you invest a little. So the exact same idea as before, we have our players, we have our choices, our actions that we can take, and we have the payouts based on how we follow along this tree, and we're going to be able to find a Nash equilibrium. The only difference is that in the games that we covered last time, you and your opponent would be making your investment decisions simultaneously without knowing what the other person did. But in this case, your opponent does know what you chose before they make their decision. And you can imagine why this would lead to some different results. Right? Imagine a very simple game like rock, paper, scissors. Right? Rock, paper, scissors, 1, 2, 3, shoot. Right? That's a simultaneous game where both of you have to make your decision at the exact same time. And, it's basically random whether you win or lose, right? You shake your hand and you do whatever, and you win roughly, a third of the time. You tie a third of the time. You lose a third of the time, give or take. Imagine how different that game would be if it was sequential. If the game went where, okay, my turn, I'm gonna pick rock, and then you got to choose what you were gonna do, right? You would win every single time, right? So clearly that's a very different game when it's sequential as opposed to when it's simultaneous. Which makes sense, of course, right? They get some information about what you're gonna do before they have to make a decision. Not always the case that the person going second has an advantage. In fact, in many cases, the person going first has an advantage. We'll talk about that. But we have our nodes where decisions happen. We've labeled who is making the decision at that node. That's the person who's important there. They have their options, and then we can get to our payout. So if I invest a lot, and then also you invest a lot, we each get 50 million in profit. If I invest a little and you invest a lot, then you get 35 million, I get 85 million, and so on. All right. So let's solve this game. Let's find the Nash equilibrium of this game. We're going to get the exact same idea, where we're looking for the point where each of us is playing a best response to what the other person is doing. So the difficult part of that is, how do I figure out what my best response is? Because I don't see you. You're responding to me. I'm not really responding to you. What's my best response? What does that mean? Well, it comes down to, how do I anticipate how you're going to react to what I do? Okay. So the question is, if I want to know, should I go a lot or a little, I need to know, if I go a lot, what are you going to do, and what's my payout going to be for that? And if I do a little, what are you going to do, and what's my payout going to be for that? And then I can choose on that basis. By anticipating what you're going to do and how you're going to respond to me, that will help me decide what I want to do. Okay. Which means we're going to have to work backwards. In order to figure out what I want to do, I need to anticipate what you're going to do, which means I need to figure out what you're going to do first. So we're going to start at the end of the game and work our way backwards until we get to the top. That's the backwards induction part. So we're going to start by asking for your opponent. What is your opponent going to do in these different scenarios? What is their best response in these scenarios? So let's imagine that you have invested a lot. Now we're over here, right? So how would your opponent respond if we had invested a lot? Well, they can invest a lot as well and get 50 million. Or they can invest a little. You're going to push them out of the market. They're only going to make 35, right? So clearly 50, 30, 35. So if we invest a lot, they're going to choose to invest a lot. That is their best response. Similarly down here, if we choose to invest a little, they know that they're down here. And if they invest a lot, they're going to get 85 million. If they invest a little, they're going to get 70 million. 85 is better than 70. And so if we find ourselves down here, if you invest a little, they're going to choose to invest a lot. That is their best response to you investing a lot. So we have their best responses. And now that we know how they're going to respond to what we will do, we have the ability to actually make a reasonable choice. Because now we can actually compare these things because we know what the consequences are. So let's ask ourselves, what is our best response to their sort of like mix of choices here? If we invest a lot, then we expect they will also invest a lot, and we will get 50 million. So you can sort of imagine that this lots option right here has a $50 million payout attached to it. How about down here? If we invest a little, we anticipate they're going to invest a lot in response, and we're going to get 35 million. So you can sort of imagine this little over here having a $35 million payout attached to it. 50 is better than 35, and so we would also choose to invest a lot. That is our best response to the responses that we expect the other person is going to have. And there we have our Nash equilibrium. Their best response is to invest a lot if we invest a lot, or invest a lot if we invest a little. Based on what we think they're going to do, our best response is to invest a lot, and picking both of our best responses at the same time, we get to $50 million each as the outcome.